Welcome to babyREFLUX. Today we're going to create a made-to-measure wedge. All you'll need for this is a Wedgehog, which you have already obtained from babyREFLUX, a tape measure, a pen, a ruler, a pair of scissors and an array of different cutting materials. So today we're going to create a made-to-measure wedge, and this is designed to fit into a crib or a cot that doesn't fit the standard mattress width. So we're talking about a baby bed which has a width of between 40 and 50 centimetres, tends to be non-standard. We would take a 60 centimetre Wedgehog which has no cover and is made of a baby safe dense foam. As we take it out of the bag, you will see that the foam is nice and dense. It doesn't retain the shape of my hand like memory foam. It springs back almost instantly, which is perfect for the consistent incline that your baby would need for support. It's also worth noting that because the foam is so dense and because there is a small amount of spring in the top of the foam, as you're cutting through it, you may find that the knife will spring back at you. So it's very important to use a slow, gentle movement. So it's very important to note that as you're cutting through the foam, that the knife glides through it very gently and doesn't press down too hard and bobble around. The first thing we're going to do, measure the width of the wedge that we would like to create. For the purposes of this demonstration, we're creating a 45 centimetre made-to-measure wedge. So the first thing I'm going to do is work out my measurements, and for that I'm going to need a tape measure and a pen. We're simply going to measure out 45 centimetres from the edge, following as parallel as you can so that you don't get angles, to 45 centimetres. So this is where we mark for the first time with just one single dot with a pen. The next thing to do is to create the second measurement, because we're going to join these up with a line. Again, following the parallel so that we don't get a dodgy angle. We mark 45 centimetres with a little dot, and there we have our measurement, 45 centimetre wedge. The next thing to do is to take a ruler and join up the dots, and this allows you to have a cutting line which keeps it nice and straight and you don't end up with any angles or rough edges. If you don't want to use the same pen you've used your dots, you can use a pencil. So now I'm just going to join up the dots to make sure that my cutting guide is straight. I'm going to use the edge of a pen and gently draw a line. Now we have our wedge measured and ready to cut. We simply need to work from the thick end down to the thin end. And to do this, we need to make sure that we stay safe. We keep ourselves out of the way of the cutting line. So I'm going to begin cutting with the utility knife because I've used it before and I know it works very well. For the purposes of this demonstration, I'm just going to use 3 or 4 gentle slices through the foam. As you go, you just need to monitor how close you are getting to the base of the wedge. So it's really important to go slowly and make sure that the vertical downward pressure allows you to get a nice clean finish. It's also important that the working surface needs to be protected. This is a utility bench, so I'm not too concerned about any markings or scratches. However, if you're using a kitchen table or a dining table, then it is worth getting a cutting mat or even a kitchen cutting board just to protect the surface that you're working on. So now I'm using the utility knife and I'm going to start with some gentle establishing cuts. I'm following the line and I'm going very slowly. So the first cut has actually cut through quite a long way, even to the point the thin end of the wedge is almost completely separated. So we're going to repeat the process, making sure we don't create a second cut, apply the same amount of pressure. It's important to note that as you are cutting the foam, that you keep your body away from the direction of the knife. If the knife gets stuck in the foam or snagged on a section of the foam and you find yourself abruptly moving with the knife, you may cause an injury. So we're going to make our second cut. I can now feel that I've actually gone through the foam at this point, so I probably wouldn't need to use the scissors, but if you wanted to, you could continue the cut with the scissors. So we're now going in for a third cut, and this process continues. Just checking that I'm not creating two cuts, slithers of foam, or any irregular shapes. Also at this point it's worth just checking that you are going to continue down in a nice straight line, and so we go through for another cut. Applying a little bit more pressure. I just want to show you where we've got to now with just a few cuts. We've now come right the way through the thin end, and we are almost halfway through the thick end. So it's really important to make sure now that we have this inequality, so we've got the thick end still a long way to go and the thin end already cut through. So make sure that when you're cutting, you're just aware that you don't recut an area that's already been cut. We're almost all the way through there now. So I'm just going to be really careful. If I just lift this up, you will be able to see that we are almost there. And so now we've completely cut through. And we have a piece to discard. And a smaller wedge. All we need to do now is to gently remove some of the smaller crumbs of foam, and there where you have a slightly larger piece, you can just snip that away nice and neatly. So the last thing to do is to just measure the wedge to make sure that you've cut it as accurately as possible. Again, following the parallel of the top of the wedge. That says 45. Halfway down, 45, and at the bottom, 45. So there we have a homemade, made to measure wedge to fit a cot mattress that's 45 centimetres wide. All you need to do now is to pop this underneath your baby's cot mattress so that they can benefit from the elevation. Thank you for watching. I hope you found it useful. If you have any questions, please email us at help@babyreflux.co.uk.